So, welcome to the next edition of Impact the Podcast. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, you may not know, we have a little ritual that we do since this podcast was birthed during COVID-19. So we have a little ritual here where you are not allowed to use the word coronavirus. If and when you do, Neff and I will have no other choice than to take a sip of our beer of choice today. And I actually, because I knew Bernadine was here and we were talking about economic development and the importance of buying local, I actually went and got this big giant thing here from a local brewery down. It's called Poe's Sandwich Joint. It's called, what is this? It's called the Smurf Blood Splash. So this is what I'm working with today. Nev, what you working with today?
Tanya, I'm drinking water. That's it.
Yeah, right.
Like what you just did to me, I have some old Angry Orchard and you ain't got some special beer putting me to shame. Well, it's hard cider, unfiltered, hazy, and less sweet. And you've just given me a challenge where next week I've got to come up with something special, and I'll do that. I did ask Ben to join in the fun, though. I'm not sure if Miss Bernadine's going to, but Ben, did you bring anything?
You asked Ben. Mute.
Yes.
Oh, Ben's ready. Oh, Bernadine.
I am upset. I am a yards person, but now I'm a Dock Street person, and it's in my refrigerator on the first level. I'm on my third floor, yours, so I will not be running down those stairs for that.
My apologies, Bernadine. My apology. Just so you guys can see, so this is actually a blue color, like the blue Smurf. So we're gonna have no choice but to check that out. But since kicking off this podcast, we've had conversations with community stakeholders on the topic of human capital. What it means to be a catalyst, and what we've learned is there's a real interest from our listeners and guests to collaborate. And so that's why we're here today. Neff?
This month, our focus is on the concept of the reservoir. By definition, a reservoir is a natural or artificial place where water is collected and stored for use, especially water for supplying the community. We are interpreting reservoir as having what you need when you need it. So in the community, we want to hear from you. What do we need? And what do we need to do to get ourselves in a position to have that when you need it? So if you have questions for us or our guests along the way, feel free to use the chat, and then we'll open it up to everyone towards the end of the conversation. So Tanya, go ahead with the introductions.
So before I give her official introduction, I'm going to tell real quickly how I actually met Bernadine. Mom Your Business during January, which is National Mentoring Month, we host a speed mentoring event. And one of our guests, I usually get to people that are in business or in a certain field. And so we had Kelly Beard and we had Iola Harper. And so she brought Bernadine to the event. And so as I'm making my rounds around the tables and seeing how the conversations are going, and I sat down next to Bernadine, and when I got finished listening to her talk, I told Iola, I said, so you brought a ringer into our session, because she's just such a wealth of knowledge. We also had the pleasure of honoring her as one of our legends last year in 2019 at our first annual Legends Business Gala. So Bernadine is an executive level nonprofit professional and economic development specialist working in the areas of project management, strategic design and implementation, and workforce development. Currently, she is a senior research analyst for community marketing concepts. She serves as chair of the National Advisory Board for the Federal Manufacturing Extension Program, NPE, which is a division of the National Institute for Science and Technology out of the United States Department of Commerce. She is also the chairwoman of the Delaware Valley Industrial Resource Center, which provides top-level growth services to the regional manufacturing sector. And she is a retired vice president from the University City Science Center. So welcome, Bernadine.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Tanya. And sometimes when I listen to people read that intro, I'm like, I didn't know I did all of those things. And then I look at the color of my hair and realize I probably did.
And so Bernadine, I want to start by just asking you, as in your role as a senior advisor with MEP and as a mentor, obviously, what has your role been during this time of uncertainty, and where do you see yourself as a resource for small businesses as we begin this recovery phase?
So let me start from the beginning. And the beginning for me, I'm a DC girl, and I always tell people I grew up when DC was a little sleepy country town. Came here to go to the University of Penn and took my first job right there at the Science Center at the 34th and Market, when there were only 4 buildings there. I think they're now like 18 or 19. And the Science Center was an economic development agency. For the city of Philadelphia, it was like a PIDC. As a matter of fact, there were only 2 industrial development corporations. One was PIDC, the other was the Science Center. And our charge was to develop that entire tract of land using technology as a base, and we've expanded technology, the foundation, to include biotech. And it was started with 25, 30 colleges and universities. So as an economic development engine for West Philadelphia, I came in as a senior person. I was young, and I'm like, whoa, this is exciting. I knew I had stumbled upon some crazy stuff when the first president of the Science Center said, we need to put a science center on the moon. That frightened me to death. I said, what is this now, guys? This is back in the 1970s. One of the things as an economic development engine that the Science Center did was to start something called the Delaware Valley Industrial Resource Center, where we would look at the biggest users of technology are the manufacturers. And in this region, and I always tell people, I'm in the city, I'm a city gal, I'm a West Philly gal, but that economic development and the uses of technology is really regional. It doesn't stop. And Neferteri, to your point about what a reservoir is, it is there for community use. So we started the Industrial Resource Center for the Delaware Valley, our 5-county region. People don't know. There are 4,800 manufacturers in this region, all needing services. And coupled with that, we also started, when I was at the Science Center, the Ben Franklin Technology Center, so that we can get tech companies to the marketplace to provide this booming technology, the dot-com era. So that is a bit of how I started. And I think what I'm seeing in terms of this reservoir is that we used to talk about a brain drain here in Philadelphia, that students were coming in, they were going to the Penns and the Drexels and the University of the Sciences, and then they were leaving. And what would that do to the economic development engine? How would that start companies? How would that fuel companies? So the impetus for the Science Center, the impetus for the manufacturing base, the impetus for a tech service company called Ben Franklin Technology Center was to keep the students here. That's where the brains were as we were developing what we call the knowledge industry. So I played in that space first on the techie side. I tell people, you know, I code in programming language. So when you watch The Martian and he starts writing in hex, that he is speaking my language in that movie. But I also moved to look at the companies that started incubating through the Science Center. We incubated at that time about 100 and 150 IT companies to be the engine to drive economic development in this region. And I see it still going strong through Venture Cafe and the Port of Technology and all of those new and exciting activities.
Oh, that's one. That's that. I'm glad you gave us that context, because economic development, when we talk about the reservoir, these are resources that our community need to have access. So how do you see this impact of COVID-19 on those resources and having access to those resources for small businesses being able to go to the next level?
Well, this is what I see, and I'm not going to use the expression, but I'm going to use it that with every disaster, there is an opportunity. I always tell people there is the right time to start a business is the right time to start a business. So whatever you are thinking about, it's time to start a business. The impact of COVID is something that I think is going to be not really simple, but I think we need to watch our language. We need to not talk about a new normal unless we're baking some things in, such as equity, inclusion, and diversity, to bake it in to a new normal. So I call it the next normal. So anyone who is starting a business or in a business needs to think about what the next normal looks like for its business, holding constant that the whole world has had a pandemic.
Wow.
So, you put on your probability hat, you hold it constant. Everybody's in this place having a pandemic. Do your business in a next normal sort of way, baking in what you probably didn't have the resources to bake in when you first started your business.
That's interesting. Wow.
So that's what I tell people.
I think that's invaluable. And we haven't had the opportunity to meet personally. Tanya told me I was going to love you. I think she's right. I think she's right. And I'm actually from the South. I'm from Georgia. And I am still learning so much about Philadelphia and the greater Philadelphia area. And it's funny you bring up Ben Franklin Technologies, because I got introduced to them on my quest in entrepreneurship. And they took me over to an organization called the Uncommon Individual Foundation. So they said, meet me there. It's like 11 o'clock. And so I go downstairs, a lot of construction going on. And I go in and I say, I'm here for Ben. I'm here for the Ben presentation. So they said, come this way. They take me over to the office. I go inside. They said, this is Ben. I said, I don't think this is right. He stood up. He shook my hand. He welcomed me. He took me to where I was supposed to be. And I have been a watcher of Ben Pietrzyk for a while. So as the director of entrepreneur mentoring for the Uncommon Individual Foundation and co-founder of On the Wave, Ben is an agent of impact in social entrepreneurship and leads initiatives that embody the spirit of the phrase, be the change. Ben, that phrase is thrown around a lot. I think it's in good context in this situation. And I think that Uncommon is an organization that we can say is designing the change. And that's unique. So what are the unique challenges and opportunities for UIF's entrepreneurs in the midst of the pandemic?
Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to talk to you all today. I feel like I'm in such great company, and I'm so excited for our conversation today. So Uncommon Individual Foundation is a family foundation started by the Crusoe family about 33 years ago and has 5 programs today in media, education, technology, corporate, and then entrepreneurship. And I head our entrepreneurship side of things. We have 2 initiatives. We have an incubator program where we support startup for-profit and nonprofit companies in the Philadelphia area. The main way that we support these companies, we hire undergraduate and graduate level students that work on projects for these startup companies. And our vision and mission is very similar to what we're talking about, is kind of retaining talent in the Philadelphia area. These companies, we support them. We don't take equity or dollars. Rather, they provide 3 hours back to the foundation, and then we match them up with middle schools or high schools in the area where they can help lead some entrepreneurial education. And then we have another side of the program where we're educating high school students, because entrepreneurship is all about just solving problems. So we teach them about problem identification, customer interviewing, user interviewing. To the question of how the UIF entrepreneurs are reacting to the current situation, it really depends on the type of entrepreneurs that we're talking about. We work with both for-profit and nonprofit companies. So the nonprofit companies, obviously, they are in my mind, even more stress and strain because a lot of their dollars are relying on grants or individual donations, and they're unsure if some of those grants will get cut or pulled, and what the capacity individual donors will have. And then for the for-profit companies, it really depends on the stage of development. We've worked with some companies that are producing a product and maybe they had to shift their business model around a little bit, but they're okay. And then we also work with some startup companies that were in the process of getting either loans from the SBA or out getting funding, and that has just kind of halted entirely. So now they're totally changing their business model, and they're like, okay, maybe I have to build something now for a company, and the company will kind of pay for it. And then that's how I'll eventually build the product to market. So it's definitely changed a lot of things, and it really kind of depends on if you're a for-profit, nonprofit, in the different stage that you're in.
I understand. And I think geography plays a part in this situation. I'm out here, Greater Philadelphia, yourself, Bernadine's in the city, along with Tanya. There are proposed cuts, and this is absolutely for both of you all, proposed cuts to the city's budget that are going to impact a lot of programs. How do you see that playing a factor with your entrepreneurs?
So at UIF, those cuts will definitely affect some of the nonprofits and some of the for-profit companies that we're working with, and make it more difficult to obtain funding at the beginning stages. So they're gonna, as entrepreneurs, gonna have to pivot and adjust to that new reality. They might have to continue to kind of build a product or try to build something that can kind of get to market and sell sooner, rather than thinking that they're going to be bringing in all this money to kind of design something larger. So they might have to take some smaller steps before they're able to run. But it's definitely going to affect certain types of companies that are reliant on funding from those sorts of sources. Bernadine, I'm really curious for your perspective, especially around if Ben Franklin is going to have to cut funding or not, or if they're going to be able to maintain their current funding.
So both Ben Franklin and DVIRC, Delaware Valley Industrial Resource Center, have a line item in the state's budget. We know that there are cuts across all aspects of public funding, whether that's the federal government. Don't listen to the trillion thing. Something is going to happen with trillions of dollars being sent out to the publics and other stakeholders. But clearly there's going to be some cuts in the state budget. We're not really impacted in the city's budget because most manufacturers have business models that are not reliant upon public sources of funding. It's, as you said, that it's the nonprofits that are providing human services, health services, housing, that will see tremendous cuts, which therein requires, I think, the ability of those nonprofits to get as lean as they can. That's some kind of a manufacturer's term, to get as lean as they can while they can right now, and to look at their working capital, to look at their liquidity, all the things nonprofits used to not be concerned about. As we move into the next normal, I think that they can model themselves after some of the for-profit businesses, who, by the way, guys, were the principal recipients of those PPP funds, as if it is a grant. They are not. They're going to be on their balance sheet as a liability, and not everything is going to be forgiven. So you have companies in the for-profit arena that never played in the public space, are now playing in the public space, and I think they're going to get zinged.
So, you know, it's interesting, Bernadine. I and you and Ben both said that, you know, about the impact on the nonprofits. But having said that, what about from a technical assistance standpoint when it comes to those nonprofits that are providing services to these entrepreneurs? And I heard you mention housing and even education and some of those others, but there are technical services that nonprofits provide that many small businesses are going to need to get to this next normal.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I'm seeing during this particular pandemic is that those nonprofits that provide technical assistance to businesses, and DVIRC is a nonprofit, providing technical assistance to the manufacturing base in this region. And there are like 51 of DVIRCs throughout the country. There's one in every state that is a nonprofit that provides technical assistance to the manufacturing sector in its state. I think one of the things that we're going to see is that in the next normal, we're going to understand the value of these nonprofits that provide technical assistance to the for-profit industry.
That's it.
I think we're going to see that. This is going to say, what do we bake in? We need to bake in the value of things like the Women's Opportunities Resource Center that almost could not get funding and is a 7A certified lender from the SBA because they didn't have enough liquidity. So a bunch of groups ponied up so that they could have the liquidity, can provide PPP funding to the small business or in the for-profit arena. So we're going to see those types of collaborations, and I think we're going to value them differently. What do you think, Ben?
I totally agree. On the partnership between some of the for-profit and the nonprofits. And I think there are some cases where the for-profits need to almost kind of view as kind of pay for service, right? Like if they're going to be getting some of the funding and the nonprofits are not, they may have to pay for service that sometimes the nonprofits are providing them. And then in addition, as you're kind of talking about the nonprofit space, there might be more kind of nonprofit partnerships or mergers that's going to happen from this, because there's going to be limited resources out there, and there are going to be some nonprofits that are looking to achieve very similar missions and make the decision that they need to get leaner, and then in some cases they need to kind of combine and again get lean. But okay, this organization has a certain type of resource. We have a certain type of resource. We're both trying to meet the same goal. How can we work together to make sure that goal is still getting met rather than both being on islands and both floating under?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, COVID-19 has really exposed new depths of economic imbalances, right, for both employees and small businesses. What do those imbalances look like locally, and where do we begin to work on closing those funding gaps? I think this is an excellent question, transitioning from Ben's comment and something that Bernadine had said earlier. These imbalances have been exposed on a whole new level.
So just a note on imbalances, and when you play in the business space, and then I want to circle back to your comment about the affiliations. There are always imbalances. There are companies that started on third base, and then there are companies that started with an idea and the passion of the entrepreneur, which needs to be fueled, it needs to be grown, etc. I think what we see as imbalances are the imbalances we see on that not-for-profit side. At least the data and the social scientists point to that. You're not seeing too many economists talk about the imbalances as we speak from the media, populations, different demographics having exposure in different ways. We don't hear economists talking about the business side like that. And not that it's not going to happen. I think you're going to see in a new normal, you will find some companies that could not handle the pandemic. They didn't have enough capital, financial capital. Right. They didn't have enough workforce capital. They didn't have enough money in their piggy bank. So you're going to see that type of discrepancy, but what you're going to see, if those companies are wise, other companies looking to affiliate, roll up, buy, assume their debt. I mean, we don't talk about debt funding too much. We always think of entrepreneurs and equity and Shark Tank, and I want a piece of the business, right? Well, I used to tell people who incubated at the Science Center, 10% of zero is zero. Oh God, please, do the math. So I think we're going to see that. But to Ben's point, I think we're going to see roll-ups in the nonprofit sector as well, affiliations, subsidiaries, folks just looking to get leaner and leaner so that the next pandemic, which will happen, they're in a better position.
So I think that's interesting, and seeing two sides of that for-profit language and the nonprofit language. There, in my mind, still are those that should at least be in the room, maybe not a seat at the table, but they should be in the room, but they're not in the network. They're not already connected. So right now, there's very few people that I cannot access virtually. So for those entrepreneurs or small businesses that want to access, where can they reach out in our greater area?
So, excuse me, I know PSL has a fantastic Slack channel in various resources for startup companies in the Philadelphia area. That would be almost kind of like an immediate, easy place to go, is to hop on their Slack channel or email chain. Our resources, if there are startup companies that are looking to work with us, although our kind of typical summer programming has changed, where now we're working just to help all the companies that we help startups stay in business, we're still having conversations with newer companies and trying to match them up with mentors and include them in on some of the different workshops that we're holding. But I think Philadelphia has a great entrepreneurial ecosystem. I would definitely kind of start with PSL because they have a great kind of capture of all the different resources in Philadelphia. And there are virtual events happening almost every day where people can kind of hop on and join to continue to learn from others. And you're totally right, because everybody is kind of at home, it's almost actually easier potentially to get somebody on the phone or to get the attention of someone that you're either looking to speak to a user interview with, customer interview with, because everybody is remote. So while it takes away some opportunities, there are some opportunities that it does present.
Definitely has presented some opportunities.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's going to be critical is that people just get their social media game up and running and robust. Just do that, whether that's a LinkedIn and scouring, whether that's the internet and scrubbing. Deloitte is phenomenal in scrubbing databases, so we need to take a lesson out of the Deloitte page. But I think we really just need to get our social media activity up and running. And it doesn't mean we've pivoted. I'm looking at companies that said, oh yeah, we pivoted and now we're making masks. Well, if you were sewing something in the beginning, you haven't really pivoted, you just now are making masks. You're still in the sewn trades business. So I tell people you're not really pivoting because you can't walk into an office to have a meeting or to get the word out about who you are, or to search for what you need when you need it. I think it's the theme of this particular podcast. But if you get your social media activity in play, use the technology that you can, and not everybody is on Zoom, by the way, so now we're on Ring and Blue Jeans, and I'm like, why? What help?
I actually had a Skype meeting the other day. I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's actually people out here that still use Skype. I was shocked.
So, just keep it flowing. So that will require you to get someone that perhaps Ben is working with that has a phenomenal social media business. So, this is how you start collaborating. Don't do it all on your own. I like this, but I don't want to sit here and figure out what my Zoom number is just to get into a room. I want to have that person doing that for me.
Yeah. You know, on the session before us, the workforce session, they talked about getting your digital skills up and preparing folks for, you know, the need to get your digital skills up. Bernadine, I'm gonna ask you to put your other hat on for just a minute, your investor hat, and really talk about really quickly what, you know, you are seeing as far as investors in this time, and are they what are they thinking and feeling as far as the opportunities to still invest?
So this investor hat that Tanya's talking about, I wear, is really about investing in very local companies. You know, when you look at your ecosystem and your economic development, it's all local. You go down the street to get something. Amazon has warehouses throughout West Philly. That's the distribution part of a production activity. You know, you produce it, you distribute it, and somebody consumes it. So it's basically local. And I'm finding that the companies we've invested in locally are doing quite well.
Oh, good.
They're doing well because they never went elsewhere. They know their market. It's almost like there are dotted lines around their geographic border. So they're doing well. They're not having a problem. But I can tell you, if I scale it up and look at what other investors think it's the time to buy. People from like a Brown Brothers, Harriman, all they're thinking about is what can I buy now? Because things are so depressed in that marketplace. So,
wow.
You know, but here's the thing: the folks that Ben and I work with, they're not yet at the place where they're public for people to invite, but they will be looking for investor dollars as soon as they see what the direction of the next normal.
Nef?
So I think that there is the thought and the structure of the benefit corporation that I know some of the uncommon organizations are seeking or have as far as a status. And to me, in terms of it's a time to buy and it's a time to invest in our people through profit or for profit, is something that is a reservoir for our community. You're there, yes, you're providing a fee for a service, but you're here to serve the community. Where are the opportunities to support those organizations locally?
I can tell you that, you know, that's where passion comes in. So you have something like, I'm in an investor circle of aunts and uncles. We pony up our money and we make small, they're actually loans, so it's like debt investment, but it's all companies that are very, very local. There are only a few such funds like that around. Everything else uses a public source of money or a private source like private equity funds, which I always tell people stay far, far away. It's almost like, because I also play in the cannabis space. Can I say that?
You can say that.
Said it now, so it's done.
I encourage folks who say, I want to get into cannabis, and I always tell them stay as far away from the product as you need to. That product is still Schedule 1, so it's still kind of dangerous, and you don't know how you can make your money yet. So, you know, when you look at the small companies, there are not a lot of funds that have a social capital passion for developing them. So that's when I say get your skills up and scour them.
Wow, that's interesting.
So Ben, what are you thinking about when you think, you know, for-profit yet socially driven?
So there's definitely been a rise in investments into social entrepreneurship. There are more and more competitions around. Even in Philadelphia, I was a virtual judge for the Milk and Business Plan competition through UPenn, and that's all about educational ventures. And one of the criteria that they look at isn't just the profitability potential of the company, but the impact that it can have on education. I know I can't remember if it's Echo Green will invest in sustainability projects as well. So there are more and more investments, I think, that are kind of looking at that double bottom line, where it is the profitability and the chance to get a return on your investment, but also how is this company going to impact the community and the world. So there's definitely a rise in that. I totally agree the importance of investing locally. Because you really want to invest in companies and individuals that know the problem that they're looking to solve, and therefore also know the users or the customers that they're working with. And if it's a local company serving locally, then there's a much greater chance that they have a keen knowledge of that.
So just as a follow-up to that, so many entrepreneurs are working, and we've heard, Bernadine said this earlier about this word pivot, because we've heard it a lot during this time, right? Just because you're making a mass doesn't mean that you've pivoted. So I want to really get a really solid definition of what it means to pivot in your business, for one, as many have been using that to survive in this climate, but also because of your experiences with entrepreneurs is so diverse. Where do you feel immediate, again, opportunities for entrepreneurs to make an impact? Like, I've been on some calls and I've heard them talking about, telehealth is going to be, a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs and for business growth. So what are some of those opportunities? What are some of those reservoirs as it relates to pivoting for an existing business and maybe seeing some other opportunities to have an impact?
Well, my bias is to be a maker. And I don't mean that small maker, I'm home crocheting dolls. Not that type of maker, but it is to make stuff. It's to make stuff because we all use stuff, whether I'm using my cell phone, using my computer. We all need to use things that have been created through what we call production capital. There are 5 kinds of capital. There's the social capital. Some of that is just an aspiration. As Ben knows, to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner. But you have financial capital, that's the money part. But you also have the production capital. And I think we need to fuel more producers, especially in this region, because this region is rich in quite a lot of knowledge. You can go to any university and off the shelf take some of the technologies that they've created or found and create a business around it. That's what I'd like to see more companies or more entrepreneurs, especially those of color, to do. Go to a university, license some technology, and build a business around it. Now, when you do that, the need to pivot is less because you're really just getting started, you're out the gate. So pivoting really means doing something that you've designed a business and you're like one-off. It's like one-off. One of my guys said, oh yeah, we're not going back into the office to June 2nd. That's our way of pivoting. Pivoting from what? We're still providing technical services. You haven't pivoted. You're just going to be at home providing these technical services. So I caution people about that. Now, if he had said we were going into a whole nother product or a service based on this that was never part of the mission or the strategy of the business, I could call that a pivot. Okay. But if I'm sewing something, if I'm in the sewing industries and I start, instead of making gowns, I'm making a mask, I haven't pivoted. I've just created masks. And this pandemic is actually showing us where we as producers are very slack. We have no bench, to use a basketball term. And absolutely no bench. You know who has the bench? And I always tell people this. Wow. The Department of Defense has the bench. It has the storehouses of all the PPEs ever needed because it services the warrior. If you're in a business that services the warrior, you are probably in a business that is going to be sustained, that will be highly funded when you pitch it properly.
Wow.
So,
That's heavy stuff right there. That you talking Neff's language when you start talking about the Department of Defense. She's a vet, so
Yeah.
you're right in her wheelhouse with that one.
She's talking about supporting the warfighter.
Yeah.
And
I'm saying if you support the warfighter, you can support the residents, you can support communities.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because that is where all the technology is hidden, and that's where the warehouses are. And by the way, the Department of Defense has a major concern about manufacturers either going out of business or no longer manufacturing the parts, and I don't care if it's a bolt or a nut for their industries.
Right.
Well, and I think that that's where a lot of the opportunities are that you expressed, taking scientific research or institutional research and bringing it to market. If there's a policymaker who's going to listen to this podcast, what can they put in place or move out of the way as an obstruction to that from the university to the marketplace?
That's a good question.
I think they can always add a tax credit. Okay, you remember my formula, 10% of 0 is 0. They can always add a tax credit, and they can always do what Ben's group does, and that is to help a business increase its workforce. So if you're taking interns from universities, give that credit to the company to drill into the university and pull in an intern. So I can see a policymaker looking at something like that.
I'm taking notes. Ben, do you want to chime in on that? What can we have the policymakers do?
Yeah, I agree with those suggestions, as well as just make it more known that that is a way to go about starting a business. I think it's a fantastic suggestion. I think a lot of times people might think of entrepreneurship like they have to design the technology or the solution themselves, and they have to kind of think of how it works. It's like, no, like you're identifying a problem. So you have a problem that you want to solve, and then you go forth trying to figure out what the solution is. And the solution, a lot of times, is going to where a lot of really smart people wrote about it or did their PhD on it, and in taking that. Or you do it the other way. You start there and you read all this fantastic research, and then you think about your life, your community, and like, oh, how could I take something like that and apply it to that? So I totally agree about the tax credit, encouraging companies to hire local talent, and just let people know that that is a way to go out and build businesses from a policy level. They have a lot of power over marketing that they can do in communities.
Just one last question, and if anyone has questions, the chat box is available. You can also open up your mics as we get ready to wrap up, but just really one last question. We've all heard the term that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So we've all had plans prior to COVID-19. We all had plans, and we all, where would we be? Where would we be? What would we be doing? And all of that has been derailed. So what was your plan, and how has that changed due to COVID-19? Ben?
Well, just to humor you guys and God, I'll give you 3 plans. One from my personal life, and then one from On the Wave, and then one from UIF. So with On the Wave, we work in the Dominican Republic in rural communities. The name On the Wave comes from Ondo, means wave or ripple, comes before the English word, because the Dominicans' skills and needs come before the Americans. I'd worked with other organizations that were more kind of volunteer heavy about the volunteer experience. So what we do is we partnered with a local community, and the biggest problem they identified was rural healthcare. They're a community separated by multiple rivers. So we've been working over the past couple years to build a healthcare clinic there. In December, we had this huge fundraiser where we were able to send 2 bilingual staff members down there to work with the government, got the physical structure done. We had people in the community start classes, and then, we got to pull the staff. The community is totally isolated now because of the pandemic. So it's like, all right, like I have no idea how we're going to finish the clinic or potentially try to provide services to that community, which is devastating. So we're looking now at telehealth options. So that obviously didn't go according to plan. At UIF, Typically, we hire undergrad, graduate level students. Due to the pandemic, we were unable to do that. I had a colleague, Bria, who this makes me a little angry every time I talk about it. She went to high school, college, and graduate school in the United States, but had her work visa denied in January. So we were actually in the midst of hiring her replacement when everything went down. So that obviously God was laughing at us then. And then my fiance and I recently got engaged. So whenever anybody asks, like, "Oh, when are you guys getting married?" It's like, I
Man, you had a lot of planning going on, man. You had some pretty major stuff. That's major stuff. Feeding people and getting married. You had some serious stuff going on.
Glad he got to get that off his chest.
Probably, yeah. What about you, Bert?
Well, I really thought I was retired. Then the pandemic hit, and I realized, working with all the manufacturers, that I'm not retired. They want some strategic direction. Which way should I go? So it's been kind of crazy. And in my retirement, and I've never been on so many chat rooms and Zooms ever in my life, and I'm a senior techie. I have discovered a book of poems that I have been writing since my youth. They're very juvenile, and I don't care. I'm going to publish them.
Wonderful.
And get a friend's young daughter to do the illustrations. I want you all to buy it. It has no title yet. Maybe I'll call it Rona Was Here. But so I have. That was a plan, and not totally derailed, because I tend to be one of those self students. I study all the time, so it's been cool.
Rhoda was here. That's hilarious.
Rhoda was here. So I tell you what, for me, I knew change was coming. I could feel it. I just didn't know it was going to be in this form. But I do feel blessed. I feel fortunate that I and my family are healthy, and I really just want to be of service. I don't know if anyone has any questions, please put that into the chat. And if anyone wants to share, where did you plan to be and how has that changed since the pandemic? I know a friend of mine, Daniel, is on the line. Daniel, if you're listening, do you want to unmute and share? I'm going to call him out.
And Kenny's on the line too.
Yeah, it's only fair that you call me out. I'll turn my camera. I called Neferteri out during a conversation the other day, and hey everyone, my name is Daniel Aguirre. Yeah, I'll tell you some funny plans that I had. I was living in San Diego, California, and I moved to Cleveland to take a big leap of faith on myself. And I'm also very, very lucky to be working and to be doing work that I feel is meaningful. But I have a daughter who's in San Diego, and we had all these plans. She was gonna be here for a month, for the whole month of April. We were booking our trip to Thailand, which we've been planning for like 2 years now. And God's like, that's cute. Oh, plans. So yeah, I didn't get to do any of that, but I've been working with Neferteri on I've been designing a series of community dialogues and listening sessions, and just really trying to hear from hear about the realities that people are navigating every single day, and from those voices that are not usually in spaces where decisions are made. And so Neferteri has helped me think through some things and join the conversation we had with parents and guardians, and ended up being just a conversation with moms, which was amazing. So yeah, I don't know what to do with any of it right now. And I'll be very honest, like I'm in a really difficult headspace, because I'm just thinking about Big George and how he was murdered.
Yeah.
And that's just like weighing on me, and I don't know what to do with any of it because obviously I'm not Black, but I have so many friends that are, and I feel their pain, and I want to carry that pain with them. I just don't know what to do. You know, I'm an immigrant. I'm from Mexico, and I fear police and immigration like every day. So I understand that, but anyway, I know I'm sorry to derail everything that's happening. It's just those are the things that are on my mind, and as I'm listening to everybody talk, I'm also thinking about these other things. So I'm like,
this was a nice escape today, Daniel, because I went on a similar rant this morning on Facebook, and I don't know if Bernadine or Neff saw my rant earlier this morning, but it's hard to ignore. So you're not alone in that. So, but we try to end on a high note around here. So,
yeah.
So I wanted to see if Kenny had a question for Bernadine, or if anybody else, as we prepare to wrap up. There's a great, speaking of social ventures, as we were earlier, there's a great social enterprise session going on in another room, or either coming up after us. I'm not really sure. Maybe Career or Bernard or Jake could help us with that next session, because I was planning on going over, because I wanted to hear from Dr. Keith Lee Pard and some of the other folks that or Card, excuse me, that are a part of that. But Neff, you have anything else as we bring this thing home?
Muted.
We'll have to edit that out. I'm grateful. I want to thank you, Bernadine. I want to thank you, Ben. Tanya, of course, thank you for working with me on this. Daniel, Jake, Curie, Phil, Kenny, we're a small, powerful group of thinkers in this room right now. And I hope our message today is echoed just beyond this session. And I hope those decision makers, those policy makers, those small business and entrepreneurs hear this and they act on it. So every last Thursday here at Venture Cafe, you can join us for Impact, the live podcast. Next month, we have an exciting show for you, and I hope that you all will come back and hear us. Tanya?
That's all I got. Thank you so much again for joining us. If you look in the chat room, the Social Innovations Journal and Institute Pitch event, the link, Jake put the link in there. If you want to go on over to that, that's going to be an exciting session as well. So once again, thank you for listening to Impact the Podcast. I've been your host, and we out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.